This is brought to you by the Location 1 Building, 1734 East 63rd Street. When you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
Carlos Nelson with What's Up Kansas City, and today we have one of our city councilmen, Councilman Eric Bunch, on to talk about some of the things that are going on here in the city, talk about what his platform's about, and where he sees himself as a council person and moving the agenda forward for the Kansas City overall community. Welcome, Councilman Bunch.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
All right, what I'd like for you to do, could you give a pretty short synopsis of who you are, how you grew up, and what made you run for city council and that type thing?
Yeah, that's I'll try to keep that short, but
well, when I say short, it's long, but give our audience a glimpse of who you are. Maybe your constituents know who you are, but I can tell you that the 5th and the 3rd district, they probably don't know who you are. And that's the purpose of these interviews, to let our community know this is one of your councilmen. This is what he's about. This is how you can contact him to work with your 5th district and your 3rd district council people. And as I've had Raina Shaw on and Robinson and another one of our council, how they have to get this coalition with these other council people to make some things happen, where you're working on some things with them on their districts, and where they can work with you on things that you want to see happen for your constituency. And I want my overall viewership, because we're primarily African-American network, to understand these are the people that you have to work with to get some of the things that you want done.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The ball is in your court.
Well, before I jump into who I am, I'll just say that the collaboration between other council members is absolutely critical for the success of this council and this job that I found myself in, and I'm very fortunate to have such a great relationship. And I'm speaking only for myself, and you'd have to ask the others, but in particular, working with Councilwoman Melissa Robinson in the 3rd district. Our districts have a very long share a very long boundary, so there are a lot of opportunities for us to work together. And since we're both in district, we're really focused on those kind of neighborhood quality of life stuff, and that gets me to why I ran for office. Is that I am interested in national and state politics as a voter and as a resident, as a citizen of this country. But in terms of policy and politics and lawmaking, I think there's so much opportunity at the local level to make a difference in everyone's daily lives in a way that you can't necessarily do at the state and national level. Because those things are so far removed from the things that we experience the second we walk out our front door.
But I like to say all politics are local.
It absolutely is. And I think in Kansas City, we have such a great opportunity as policymakers to really change the city for the better in terms of those things that really affect, is your trash picked up? That's, a basic level of service, but what's the park like down the street? Can you get to the park? Are the sidewalks in good shape? Do you have a bus that serves your neighborhood and gets you to places you need to go? Those are things that we decide locally, and that's what's so exciting about this job, and working with folks like Melissa Robinson and Raina Park Shaw, the 2 other in-district council members,
Lee Barnes and Brandon Ellington. And
our
council people about this.
Yeah.
Getting this coalition with you other council people.
Yeah. It's so important for us to work collectively towards a big picture goal, and I am very much an outcomes
Where do
person.
you come from? Like I said, where did you
So
go to
back,
high school?
so let's back up.
Play
Yeah,
sports?
so I grew up I'm not a native of Kansas City. I grew up.
I'm from New York, but I've been here since '78.
All right. Um, I grew up on the east side of Missouri, about an hour south of St. Louis, in a small town called Bonne Terre, Missouri. It's St.
I know where it's at.
It's in the news a lot now for reasons that I'm not too super proud of. But it shaped me in a way that I think a lot of people don't always understand. But small communities are not that different than big cities in terms of, we had a lot of the same challenges that a big city faces. But what got me interested in the political side of things was my grandma was actually the mayor of my hometown.
Now we talking. Now we cooking with grease.
Right. So before I came along, she was the mayor of my hometown. She was the first woman ever be elected as mayor, and across many of the
You
counties.
spent a lot of time with her?
I did, yeah. She was very influential in my, I think, outlook on life and my priorities as a human, to be accepting and inclusive, and I think fight for what's right and what's just, and what I think really led me down the path towards endeavors for racial and economic equality, and fighting sexism and things of that nature. Someone in her position really faced a lot of sexism as a woman in politics, and so she really, I think, shaped me very early on. And she passed in 1999, so she's been gone for quite a while now.
You didn't get a chance to see you blossom.
Yeah, I know. It's and she never met my wife or, of course, my kids, but that's one thing that's kind of really, really sad that she didn't get to see, the political stuff, whatever, but to see my family and meet my wife, who I think she would absolutely
love and adore.
But my grandma was very much an influential person.
Was she a matriarch?
Sort of. I mean, that family was, I don't know, it's hard to describe exactly their culture, but she was later in her life when I was around, so I didn't get to see her too much, and all of my dad's brothers had moved away to different parts of the country, so we didn't get to see that quite as much. But she was an interesting character. She was a hoot to be around. And
tell our audience about what your platform is, per se. What are some? Give 5 or 6 of some of your major concerns that you'd like to see straightened out.
Well, I'll preface this by saying, and I just briefly touched on it a bit ago, that I'm an outcomes focused person. I believe in looking towards the long view, and that's, I think, hard for a lot of politicians because our time is limited. But I believe that the decisions we make right now have to be working towards big issues. And one that is very clearly on the front of my mind and many of ours right now is racial equity and dismantling the systemic racism that really affects the city. And we as local policymakers have a huge role in that. And I'm not going to pretend that I certainly don't have all the answers, but I want to be part of the solution there. And the way that I think that we can start to accomplish that is how does every decision I make policy-wise work towards that, and public health outcomes, better livability for a community, but most importantly, dismantling the systemic challenges that we have. But through that, that's how I make policy decisions. But the big priorities that I think we can work on towards that end are things like better investment in public transportation. That was something that I ran on as a candidate. And I've been involved in advocacy on the other side of the policy making coin. So investments in public transit, making sure that not only are we making public transit better and more reliable, but making sure that people can still afford to live in the places we make those big investments. You know, the Prospect Max is something that this city should be very proud of creating a really, really great next generation bus rapid transit for the
Is
city.
anyone in any other cities, to your knowledge, doing the type of things that we're doing with the metro, with these?
Yeah. Well, and we're unfortunately I would say we're behind the game a little bit on that. But we're working with a lot less money than what some of our peer cities. We totally underfund public transit.
They have other cities that have free bus lines.
Well, that's new.
That's what I'm saying.
So that is something that we are being looked at as a lot of cities are looking to us to see how that works out, and that was an initiative of mine to
Excellent.
work towards that, because you know, that doesn't necessarily make the bus work better, and in fact, it could actually, if we're being honest, you know, fares generate some revenue for the ATA, but I truly believe that in a city like ours, where our most vulnerable citizens, and I'm a bus user. Before the pandemic, I rode the bus every single day to work, and so I'm a user of it. But our most vulnerable citizens rely on that transit, and that $1.50 that they have to put in every single time they board that bus could mean the difference at the end of the month, the difference between making rent, making a light bill, putting food on the table. And I felt that we can find the money to replace that fare, to make sure that those families have money at the end of the month to do.
Hey, Punch, let me tell you this. I was homeless years ago, and here in Kansas City. And man, that $1.50, because a lot of people don't know, homeless people spend a lot of time at the library because it's got heat and it's got, you know, air in the summer. And I'd spend my from the opening to the closing, and the system, I was staying out south, but you had, and I used to go to the Plaza Library. You had to go downtown to come uptown.
Oh, God.
And a lot of times, $1.50 was all I had in my damn pocket.
Right.
And I was like, boy, I wish they would have had these free rides now. And now that economics are playing such a very crucial part in today's society, the have-nots, I thought this was an excellent thing that you put forward.
Yeah, I believed I still believe it's the right thing to do, to not burden some of our, and in your case, folks experiencing homelessness. You know, that $1.50 could be the difference between food and getting someplace warm. And we need to make sure that, I just believe that $1.50 is better spent elsewhere rather than putting it into the fare box.
I want to go into a rapid session real quick. How do you feel the elections went last week?
With all the primaries and
were you satisfied, or what, do you have any comments on that?
Well, one thing that I think we all should be very proud of is passing Medicaid expansion. That is going to be critical for the state of Missouri. You know, rural hospitals are closing left and right. This is a lifeline to many of those communities. But I think don't realize, many individuals don't, many of our citizens here don't realize how much money, like how much burden is on the health levy that funds the health department and a big chunk of Truman Medical Center. A lot of that's going towards that gap that existed because we hadn't expanded Medicaid. So that is going to save us potentially millions of dollars that we generally put towards indigent care, folks who are in that gap. And so we're fortunate that the voters spoke loud and clear. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about. I'll also say that, you know, it's exciting to see a former fellow council member on the ticket for lieutenant governor, to see Alicia Kennedy an overwhelming victory in her primary, and I'm optimistic that she can prevail here in November. But what I love about that is it's a local person, it's a woman of color, out there showing that she can run statewide, but has that local experience at the city level that I think puts a different perspective on anyone's policy making. And so that was another one that I was really excited about, and I'm excited to vote for her in November.
All right. So next, what are some of your issues going into 221 that you'd like to see addressed or talk about?
Well, one that I didn't expect to be quite so outspoken on this particular issue, or for it to be as big of a deal as what it has been, but it's local control of the police department.
That was on my next next thing about that local control, and I've got Ashley Bland coming on later on today. She's a state rep, and those are some key issues. This police department thing.
Yeah, we as a city need autonomy over the governance of our police department. As long as those decisions are being made by people who are appointed by the governor, as opposed to a locally appointed.
Right. Well, we get where you coming from. You answered that. You want local control.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this airport for a minute.
Yeah.
This airport has been a boondoggle. A little bit about me. I used to own the second or third largest Black construction company in Kansas City, founding board member of the Full Employment Council, and all of that. So I know which way is up around here. And that airport deal smells. It doesn't pass the smell test with me.
Okay.
And when you start talking about equality, racial justice, and economics, that airport is not doing what it's supposed to do from my little knowledge. How do you feel about it?
Well, I have maybe a bit more faith in the process, but I think we can always strive to do way better than what we're currently doing on any infrastructure project, to do a better job of diversifying our MBE contractors, to making sure that we're not just hitting our MBE, our minority business enterprise goals, but exceeding them. We're not at our goal yet.
They're not doing anything. Let me tell you this. I've interviewed a couple of contractors and different, and I think on that roof or whatever, they're giving all this stuff to these out of town people, and we got people right here, especially in the minority community, that can perform the jobs, and we need that type of economic circulating in our community, and it's not happening. I've just seen so many projects that my community pays taxes on, and we do not end up on the economic part of the equation.
Yeah, and if I would be lying if I said I was satisfied with where we are with the hiring of not just MBEs but local MBEs.
Local.
And the same thing could be said for the workforce side too. We know that the workforce that's hired up there does not really.
Let me say this. I had Crosby Kemper on. This was like about 8 months ago, and he comes on every now and then, and we were talking about the same type situation. And Crosby said, you can go out to those sites, look at the license plates.
Yeah.
Look who's on those jobs. Well, and we're paying those taxes, and I don't think that we've been represented really well.
Well, Crosby Kemper and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. Right. I'll just be upfront about that. I think
that's not. I don't see eye to eye with a lot of the stuff that he.
But I would say that is a bit overstated. I've seen the data. The data says that most people who are working on that job site up there are from the Kansas City metro area, but the vast majority of them are. There are some who are coming in from out of state, but to say that every license plate in the
Well, hold it. I'm not even just talking about that. I'm talking about, and that was another question. I believe that if you're working on Kansas City projects and what have you, you should live in Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, we have to strive for that, but I think we have to also be realistic about, when we have so much development going on and so many construction jobs going on, we have to be mindful that, we haven't done a good enough job of developing the workforce. And that's another problem that we need to make sure that we're doing much better job. And organizations like the Full Employment Council are critical to that. They do a great work. But we as a city haven't invested nearly enough to do this critical.
I came to this town. This town was a union town back in '78. Yeah. And we talked earlier about racism. This was a racist town to a degree, it was just like under the surface.
Yeah.
And I told you I was in construction. You couldn't pass the plumbing test to get your master's. You couldn't pass the master electric, how it was rigged. And they basically tore down all of the Vogue Tech type situations that our whole community, college is not for everybody.
Well, yeah, and I think we got away. That's a national trend right now, is that we have a shortage of workers doing, especially in the skilled trades, because we spent so much time saying that the only path forward is college, and and we weren't presented another option. And the skilled trades is for so long was that, and unfortunately as you said, we've dismantled a lot of our VOTEC programs. But I will say that, look at MCC, Metropolitan Community College, is doing a lot more work in that area. And then you've, of course, got the unions doing a lot of really great training, and KCPS with manual tech is doing, but we've got to do more in order to make sure, because that's another thing, is making sure that good jobs are getting to the folks, in particular in the 3rd and 5th district, where we never fully came out of the Great Recession.
Do you think the schools should really be opening? Because from this is my perspective. I think that the corporate community, they have upset the balance of our thinking, what's real, and people are talking with their pocketbooks in mind and not their health in mind, that are in these positions, and following the federal government guideline. And all I can say is, if I'm listening to the president, I'm, drink bleach and all of the different things that he's talking about, and rushing to open up this system. I think this is a critical time in history. Damn, you can't even vote for the presidency now behind all of this stuff. And we don't see how serious it is with sports still going on in high school. And you're talking about bringing these kids back to school any kind of way. What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I mean, we should, honestly, we shouldn't be where we are right now. We should have addressed this pandemic from the get-go and not ignored it in the way that our president did. And we are suffering as a result. Our economy is going into the tank because of a lack of response. And it is unconscionable how our president has responded to this. So schools, I mean, here's the deal with schools. We do not have a good option. And, we go to all in person, and then of course we're going to see outbreaks. We're going to see watch in another month or two, we're going to have outbreaks in schools across the country that decided to go back. The alternative is, remote learning. But then we have, and especially in the urban core of our communities, we have.
But that's it, as it relates to Wi-Fi and the ability.
The digital divide is so great. on top of that, we have many frontline workers who have no choice but to go into work and don't have the flexibility to stay at home with their kids to make sure that they're able to get online and do the schooling. But our health is of utmost importance, and we cannot send our kids into school, at least not in full numbers, until we have this virus under control.
I think people are thinking how I look at it when I have these conversations. I think that our local officials, the mayor and our council people, we know that we should close down. But the federal government has so much strength. They saying this is what you do, and the cities follow the guidelines. But I thought when we was closed down about 2 months ago, I thought if we just stay closed down for another 2 weeks or 3 weeks, in place at home, that would have really worked wonders for Kansas City. I can't say about the other cities.
I think the challenge that we were up against, and I mean, if it had been up to me, I probably would have erred on the side of caution. I would have said, let's not open this soon. And I was vocal about that in these discussions with the mayor's office. But we were one entity, one municipality willing to do that. And so with everywhere else around us opening up before us, it became economic survival.
We know what that was about. All right, let's talk about what's your feeling on the federal government coming here, talking about they're going to solve murders and they're going to do this and they're going to do that.
You know, let's be honest. We have a very serious problem with homicides this year. There is no question about that. That speaks to my earlier comment about local control. We need local control so that we can really address that with the law enforcement, with PD, to make sure that we're doing a better job preventing crime. But do I believe that we should have brought in the federal law enforcement agencies to investigate? And I don't believe they're just investigating crimes. There's a lot more going on.
It's more to this than meets the eye from my perspective.
You know, and it would not have been something that I would have done. I will very much adamantly say that this is not the approach that I would have taken. And I was at the outset pretty outspoken against what I felt was something of a federal occupation of our city street.
All right, let's move on to what's your take right now on this city manager situation? Until about 2 weeks ago, I had called Morgan, Morgan up there with the mayor. I said, Morgan, hook me up with the city manager, right? I want to interview. He says he's nothing but temporary or something like. I was like, I didn't know that, and I didn't think most of our Kansas City community knows that.
Yeah.
And so when I had the interview with Shaw and a couple, when I was asking them what were their issues and what the airport was one, the city manager, getting the city manager. And so I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, some things came out. I glanced over things and there were a couple of picks, but to me, it doesn't seem like there's any good candidates out there right now. I don't know.
I think that there are some good candidates out there, and I think we have a handful of folks, and we picked 4 out of the pool who applied. And you know, when Troy Schulte left his post as city manager late county and went over to the county, I think it's good that we've still got him around. As I think he was a really good city manager. I think, but to his credit, I think he realized that there was maybe a time for a change for him and maybe for the city. But and that's all in the past. And here we are today without a permanent city manager, and hiring someone in the age of COVID is a real interesting animal. But hiring this council, hiring the next city manager will be the most important decision I believe we will make, because the city manager is the leader.
A city manager form of government. Most people don't even the average Joe Blow don't even understand.
Yeah, we're one of a handful of cities of our size that has a manager council form of government. And for those who aren't familiar with it, we don't hire and fire. The mayor doesn't hire and fire city staff. We have the city manager who then oversees almost all of the rest of the city departments. And he or she is the absolute critical staff member for the future of the city. And Ernest Rouse is our acting city manager right now, and he's fantastic. But he sees his job as kind of keeping the boat afloat, so to speak, and he's doing a great job of that. But we've got to move forward and get someone in place. But we also need to make sure it's the right fit, because it's a big decision for the next.
We're rushing into it, but we've been basically a year without a city manager, right?
Not quite. About 8 months. He left in November.
All right.
So, but yeah, we're going. I mean, it's very likely we'll get to a year before we get a new city manager in. Just sheer logistics of the whole.
So
thing.
how are you coming along and learning the system? Because I know about the system. A lot of times you get a new council person, until they do a whole term, they really don't understand how all this works. They understand, but they don't understand unless you really, that's all you doing is looking at what our situation is. You really need 2 terms to get some things done. How are you coming along with your education about Kansas City politics and City Hall?
I think I came in with, I think, a little bit higher knowledge of how the whole system works than the average person does. And I won't compare myself to, I've got great colleagues who also have extensive knowledge on it, which I think is unique to have so many with prior experience in one way or the other. But I came from the community advocacy side, where I was a local transportation policy person. And so I got to know not only the political process and sort of the political proclivities of the city council, but also I was very up to speed on a lot of the city charter and how the legislative process works. But my experience and my knowledge on how the city worked was really limited to a handful of city departments, public works and parks and planning. Getting to understand more on water, and
that was my next thing. What do you see as Kansas City's got a big headache with infrastructure? And from an economic standpoint, what do you see on that? If we can touch on that a little bit.
Well, we're an old city that has new parts. It's an interesting way to put it, but we have aging infrastructure in the heart of the city, and in the 4th district, we've got some of the oldest infrastructure, and when it be it water pipes or streets that need some love. And the same is true for the 3rd and the 5th district, and parts of the 6th district, of course. But the urban core, that the original city limits, we've got old infrastructure, and it's a lot to take on. But
how do you feel the tax the tax assessment and all of that? And do you think that the residents, you can speak for your 4th district, but I'm putting the 3rd district, do you think the residents really understand what's getting ready to happen over the next half decade as it relates to their taxes to try to solve some of these problems?
Well, with
that gentrification, talk about that a little bit.
Oh boy. The good news is that we're setting off on a path to give that infrastructure the love with the GEO bond, which when we passed that in 2017, that's $800 million of infrastructure investment with only a teeny tiny increase in taxes over 20 years. And so we're able to start to put our infrastructure on the path to recovery. We also are fortunate to leverage a lot of our local money with federal money, be it transportation money or Army Corps of Engineers for flood control kind of stuff. So I'm optimistic, but we have to make good decisions now and make sure we focus attention on fixing what we have first before we start to build.
The
And
new
we're
stuff.
doing too much. I firmly believe we're building too much new stuff that is going to come back to haunt us in 30, 50 years.
But
So
that's the same thing what I'm was saying, that it seemed like people are, all they're thinking about is economics
yeah,
and how they're going to generate economics for themselves.
and
And I'm more like a Kennedy guy.
yeah,
Kennedy's back in the day, or what you can do for your country, not what your country. And I break that down to your city, your family. What is it that you can contribute to the whole, and how society has been programmed now? It's about me, and let the other guy take care of himself. Long as I'm taking care of me and mine, don't knock at my door. And that's not what America was built on.
Look no further than the debate about wearing masks right now, and how, you know, we know that the science backs up wearing masks and you know, closing down and yet there's this attitude that you can't tell me what to do. It doesn't matter if it harms someone else. And so when I think of, you know, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, it's things like that. We've got to take care of each other, and that starts with things like, you know, putting this on if you go out in public and not throwing a fit about it, and going viral on social media for throwing a fit at Costco. But in terms of, so, yeah, what someone can do right now is be thoughtful about how they could be exposing people to this really nasty virus. But you know, back to the infrastructure thing, you know, we do have to consider economics, but there's no better economic investment, a return on investment, than investing in our people and making sure that the people who currently live right now in this city are taken care of, instead of constantly chasing, you know, in particular on the fringe of the city, to make sure, you know, that the developer is well taken care of. We need to make sure that our people are well taken care of.
Well, I think that's what the George Floyd movement is about. It's not, to me, it's not so much about Floyd. It's about that the world is seeing that the haves, they just want it all. Everybody is the 1%, the 10%, and everybody, the justice system is broke. Everything is broke. And as I said earlier, I think this is a major turning point in American history. We're declining superpower, even though we have the armed forces and all of that. And we're dealing with some things that we should have been dealing with half a century ago. And the major thing is this white supremacy and racism and unequal opportunity, because America is great. America is one of the greatest countries on this planet, but the people that are running things at different times is an issue. In closing, Councilman, what would you have to say to your constituents and overall Kansas Cityans?
You know, we're in unprecedented times in so many ways, and you know, we're going to get through this pandemic and we're going to come out stronger at the end. And the reason why we're going to come out stronger at the end is not necessarily because of the pandemic itself, but it's the reckoning that we're having right now because of events like the protests in response to the George Floyd murder. It's bringing up, it's not just about law enforcement, it's about the systems change that we absolutely have to have. And that, I don't think, would have happened. We wouldn't have seen this outcry, I believe, if it hadn't have been for the pandemic. The pandemic was a catalyst for this, what I believe to be transformational movement, and I'm not the arbiter of that. I don't experience racism. All I can do is recognize my role in that, and that I have an absolutely critical role in dismantling that white supremacy that we've seen for 400 years. So it is a crazy, scary time because of the pandemic, but I believe that we are reckoning with things that we have needed to reckon with for 400 years in this nation. And for us to really be that great nation that I believe we are, we have to finally come to terms with that and dismantle it, and dismantle our racist historic past. So I know that that's a big task, but I think that this city council is ready to take that on at this level. And I think that, you look at other cities that are doing the same kind of thing, Minneapolis, and is really leading the charge on some of this big stuff. And I'm optimistic that we'll get there. But again, I'm just here to try to be a part of that change. And I always welcome any sort of feedback on how I could be doing better. I don't take criticism personally. So if anyone ever has an issue, I'm open ears and ready to listen. And you can always reach out to my office, reach out to me directly.
Give them your information.
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is email, and that's Eric, eric.bunch@kcmo.org, and we generally respond within 24 hours. So feel free to reach out to me and honestly share with me what we can be doing better as a city and how I can help. If it's anything from a broken street light to these big issues that we're facing right now.
Hey, Councilman, it was a pleasure having you on, and I think that more people will, especially my viewers, will know who you are, what your concerns are, and how you feel about important subjects that are affecting our overall Kansas City community. And as I tell people, if the Black community is not healthy, how can you say you have a healthy Kansas City?
Absolutely right. Absolutely. And I can't fix it, but I'm here to help.
You're doing your best. Yeah. Hey, Councilman, it was a pleasure having you on the show, and we look forward to working with you through your tenure as a council person.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This has been.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.